I wanted to make this video because I think there are going to be a lot of people that can relate and understand and maybe even find a whole alternative perspective. Is I recently got reconnected with my dad that I have not spoken to, heard from, not even seen in over 20 years. I have talked briefly about this, but never really gone full in depth about my dad and where he has been in my life. I talked about the absence of him and my own personal thoughts on that, like in the history of this YouTube channel. I cannot entirely tell you specifically what video that was or what videos those were where I talked about it. It wasn't specifically me just talking about it. It was just, brought up within the conversation that I was having in my videos. But I wanted to make this video because I think so many of you are going to find a lot of value within this. Is I have told myself my New Year's resolution, which was to push myself outside of my comfort zone. Me making this video is really pushing myself outside of the comfort zone, just because outside of my comfort zone, just because it is very personal to me. Having that said, as I thought about making this video, is I told myself, don't aim for perfection. Be raw, be real, and just, like let your guard down a little bit, and that's my intention with this. Is I think your audience connects so much more with you when you're just raw, when you're real, not reckless and careless, like be competent within your conversation and your interactions, but back to the topic. Is got reconnected with my dad. As long story short, I'll make a much more deeper video going in much more detail after I get to meet him personally, and we are working that out and talking about it. And how all of this kind of transpired is, long story short, it was around, to backtrack a little bit so this video can actually make sense, how everything kind of aligned and all kind of transpired, is I have stayed in contact with my stepbrother. He's not technically my stepbrother, just because he is not my dad's biological son, but he did raise him like his own. So so during the very few years that I was present in my dad's life, or my dad was present in my life, I grew up with his stepson, who he looks as his son, and he is. And so I grew up knowing him as my brother, and I don't think otherwise. I don't see him differently now. He's literally my brother. And having that said, is long story short, is we got reconnected with my stepbrother or our stepbrother, because I'm a twin. So we got reconnected with our stepbrother. I want to say it was around sometime around high school, maybe like freshman year, um, maybe even middle school, somewhere around that time. So we got connected with our stepbrother, and we stayed in contact through like texting and things like that. And then eventually we got to reconnect personally with our stepbrother in 2016, I think it was 2016. Yeah, I believe it was 2016. So like roughly 10 years ago. And we just stayed in contact, whether it was through like FaceTimes, texting. It was primarily texting. I think we only FaceTimed every once in a great while. And eventually the conversation came up last year, where my stepbrother reached out to me, and he was like, hey, I'm having a conversation with dad, and he just wanted me to throw it out there. I don't know how you're going to feel about it, but he wants to know if you would be interested in getting reconnected, or something along those lines. And I was completely open to it. As it was, I have certain goals that I want to accomplish within this lifetime, or a bucket list, I guess you could say. And one of those, which was to actually reconnect with my father, reconnect with my dad, and just see if there's anything there. Like, I have nothing to lose but something to gain. And that was my perspective when I wrote down this bucket list or set of goals that I want to accomplish within this lifetime, or milestones, I guess you can say. And so when I received that message, I reflected off of when I wrote that goal. And although when I wrote that, my intention was to reach out to them, and it happened the other way around. And to me, it was just so much better because, I grew up my entire life wondering, okay, did he was it my disability that he wasn't in my life? Was it was it something about me that he didn't want to be in my life? Um, and just all of these different thoughts. One thought led into another, right? And then I just came to the conclusion where it wasn't just me; it was with all of his kids. So then I kind of found, in a way, it's not your disability, right? And I'll probably go in much more detail maybe later. Realistically, probably will be the next time I write a book, which I am not working on one now. I'm waiting for a certain milestone before I do that. But I don't have any malice. I don't have any negative animosity against him or anything like that. So what happened is during when my brother texted me and he was like, "Hey, what do you think about you know Dad, what do you think about, getting in touch with, about reconnect, or what do you think about Dad reaching out to you or something like that?" And it was something along those lines, like pretty much us getting reconnected. And I was very fonded of the idea. It really, really meant a lot. This was in the month of August. And bear in mind that I have been that March of last year, 2000, I mean, excuse me, March, yeah, it was last year. March of 2025, I actually became an author. And January 16th of 2026, I became a published author. Now, the reason why I bring this up within the conversation is because nobody knew I wrote a book. Nobody knew I signed a contract and became an official author of last year. Nobody knew that. The only person that knew that was me, my mom, and my two siblings. Technically, three siblings. Um, Me and my mom, my two siblings, and I have a cousin who I look to as a sibling. So it was very, very hush hush, very, very quiet. I didn't share with anybody. I personally am just a very private individual. You will not know or hear about something until I don't tell you what it is I am going to do. I just announce arrivals. That's personally me. Operate best that way. So the reason why I bring that up within this conversation is just because when that conversation came into play, like, hey, what do you think about you and Dad getting to see each other? Like reconnecting. And I was like, absolutely, I loved the idea. And the reason why I say that is just because it felt so good to me where to know my dad became interested in building a relationship with his son, with me. Not what just having that thought, I want to build a relationship with my son. Not not he comes across his son that he wasn't in his is how can I put this simply? It felt so good. I'm gonna just keep it simple. It felt so good to have that conversation spark where I want to get to know my son and not have the conversation spark when he finds out his son that he wasn't always in his life, isn't always present in his life, became a published author. He sees these certain accolades or certain milestones or certain things kind of happening, and then that spark happens. Oh, I want to see my son. Now the intention could be I just want to build a relationship with my son. But in the back of my mind, I would have always questioned and wondered, did he really want to develop a relationship with me? Or did he only want to develop a relationship with me just because of who I am or who I became. And the reason why I'm sharing that openly in public, I never share this out loud. I only share this with very, 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 very few people. Like literally probably within like 5 people. And there's no malice behind it. I wasn't angry when that conversation happened. And I was, as I was having these conversations with these individuals, I was like, I don't know if I'm wording that right. I don't know if it's coming out wrong. But they were like, no, they were like, I know what you mean. So it felt really good to have that conversation spark because again, nobody could have even guessed that I was working on a book. Nobody, like the way I kept it hush hush, nobody could have known. And so it felt good to have that spark happen. Like I want to get to know my son. So having that said, fast forward. I know I said long story short, but there's so much more beneath it. But to fast forward to present time is my dad actually reached out to me. So my dad actually talked to my twin sister first, who is my little sister because I'm older by a minute. And he talked to my sister first, and then my sister called me. I believe that same night, maybe the next day, something like that. And she, you know what? Actually, no. She didn't tell me until like a week afterwards, something like that. Maybe a few days, something like that. But anyhow, he talked to my sister first. My twin sister called me up and was like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something." And she doesn't really tell me certain things like that, or she really doesn't talk to me like that unless it's something like very, very serious or important to her. And so when she said that, I immediately knew, okay, Vic, whatever it is you're thinking about, like put your focus 100%. Give your sister the undivided attention, and hear whatever it is that's going to come out. And first and foremost, it came out of my mouth is everything okay? Are you okay? Is everything like what's going on? And she was like, oh no, like everything's fine, everything's okay. And that's when she told me, she was like, hey, I actually talked to our dad. And, at first I was like a little shocked just because I've always had a different mentality in terms of rekindling that relationship. And, I won't go in depth there, but, I just looked at life differently. And so when I heard that she had that conversation, that's when I knew you need to make it a much more of a priority to actually now he tried opening, he knocked on that door, right? It was only whether or not I was willing to open it. So when my sister opened up that door, I was like, Vic, you need to do the same thing. And yeah, so so one thing led into the next. Eventually got their number, ended up calling him, and yeah, it was a very nice, great conversation. Very, very good conversation. And I actually never even really said that out loud, but um, it was a very, very good conversation. During the conversation, it was very healthy. There was no questions like, why weren't you there? Things like that. I really didn't. I don't know if I ever really want to know. I know certain things, but like I told him at the end of the conversation, and I forgot how it happened, but towards the end of our conversation, again, I can't remember exactly how the conversation kind of led into it, but it was appropriate. And I didn't come off aggressive or angry or anything like that. I just told him, you know, I'm not focused on the past. I'm more focused on the future. Like I don't care about what has been or what could have been. I'm more focused on the now. And when I said that, he understood, and that was his mentality as well. you know and I'm sure later down the line, maybe like I don't know when, but I think somewhere probably down the line, we'll probably have like that son to son conversation. But like I'm just more focused on the now. Again, I'm not focused on the past. I have nothing to lose, right? But only something to gain. And the main intention with this video is three things. One, document this. Two, to share this. I think it's a very special moment in a way. And also, after I've spoken to my dad a few times, FaceTimed him several times since then, and all great conversations, healthy conversations. I also got reconnected with my grandma from his side, from my dad's side, which has also been very, very special. And I spoke to her in June of this year, 2026. And it was very, very nice to conversate with her. I got emotional during our conversation. And just because a lot of you, if you guys have been keeping up with my content, know how special my grandmother was on my mom's side. And like my grandmother practically raised me, alongside with my mom. And she was a very special, remarkable woman. And years ago, I cannot remember exactly how the conversation or the topic came up, but years ago, this was before my grandmother's health started to take a decline and head in that direction. But she just told me, son, she said, when you get older, try to reconnect with your grandma on your dad's side. And again, I can't remember how that conversation took place. So when I FaceTimed my grandma, and it was completely unexpected, my dad just texted me. He was like, "Hey, I'm with my mom, which is your grandma." He was like, "Would you be available to FaceTime?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And in the moment, I really didn't remember that conversation from my grandmother. My who practically raised me. And during our conversation, when I was actually speaking to my grandma from my dad's side, then there was something she said, or I can't remember what, but there was something that kind of sparked that remembrance of hey, remember what your grandma said? And that's when I got emotional. And not like I didn't get cry or tears falling out of my eyes kind of thing, but I got emotional, and I just held my emotions, uh, held my emotions in, and then after we ended the conversation, then I shed a few tears, just reflecting off of my grandma. And I'm getting a little emotional talking about that and sharing that, but it's very special. So so again, the first thing, my intention making this video was, one, to document this process, document this. I think it's very cool, especially for me when I reflect off of the history of this YouTube channel. And two is to share, my own thoughts, my own cancel, my own thoughts on. Sorry, my phone thing is going off, but um my voice feature was going off on my phone. But first thing was to document. My first intention was to document. Second intention was to kind of share this milestone or moments, special moments of my life. We haven't gotten together personally yet. If you guys have been keeping up with my history of my YouTube channel, is been, long story short, been going through some stuff primarily with my handicap van. It's fixed but not fixed, but we're gonna let that go. So um, literally haven't had a handicap van all year. So that delayed a lot of different stuff, and just personal life, professional life as well, kind of delayed a lot of things. But the third intention behind all of this is to maybe enlighten someone, where if you have, like, I don't know your story. I don't know what your mom or your dad, you know, done to you, what kind of trauma they caused you, what kind of pain or hurt or animosity or more negative influence, negative impact they had on your life. But if you have ever entertained the thoughts of, I wonder if I wonder if my dad thinks about me. Like, my mom raised me, and I'm very, very fortunate for her. And I speak very highly of her, and especially in my book. But regardless of if you ever had that thought, like, I wonder if my mom thinks about me. I wonder if my dad ever thinks about me. And that window of opportunity comes knocking at your door, where they reach out to you, and you don't know whether or not to open that door. I want you to reflect off of how I approached the situation, which was, I have nothing to lose. There is nothing that they can say. There is nothing that they can do. And there's nothing that they can say or do that can hurt me. I experienced a lot of pain in my life, both physically, mentally, verbally, spiritually. I've known pain at the deepest, ugliest, and most traumatic ways. Some parts I've shared within my book, and there's so much more that I've never spoken out loud. Don't ever think I ever will. But the reason why I share that as well is just because, again, if you have ever entertained that thought, I wonder if my mom thinks about me. I wonder if my dad ever thinks about me. And they come knocking at your door. Maybe, approach it how I did. You have nothing to lose, but something to gain. Please comment down below with if you found any value from this video. My main intention isn't just to click record and publish the video. My intention behind every single video is to click record, but have you on the other side of this camera find value of significance for you. If you guys are new, please subscribe as well. I currently have 340 subscribers, so it would be really, really nice if I can reach 1,000 subscribers at the end of this year. I'm really, really going to start to be much more consistent with my content schedule and really, really, really strive to make it. Excuse me. I'm really, really going to strive to make it to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. I think that would be a cool milestone. I'm very, very ambitiously, I'm really going to aim for 10,000 subscribers minimum, but just one step at a time, right? One day at a time. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And as always, remember, grow through what you go through. And if you guys ever want to get to know me, get to know more of who I am, if this is your first time coming across me, is you can simply Google me, Victor the Inspiration, or check out the links within the description. Again, I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And as always, remember, grow through what you go through. Much love.